Today's interviews are being held at the Century City Hotel, the Hyatt Hotel here in Los Angeles, and it is at the occasion of the LA International Book Fair, February 15th, 16th, and 17th, I believe. And we're going to begin our first interview with Jim Pepper.
Hi.
Jim, good to see you, man. Jim, just start off by telling us a little bit about your background, your family, schools, where you grew up, that kind of stuff.
Well, let's see. For context, I was born in 1952, and I'll be 56 next month. I was born in Ohio, Cleveland, Ohio, but I've lived most of my life in California. I grew up in LA and Orange counties, mostly Orange County. I graduated from Chapman University in the city of Orange, and I think that's the basic thing. I come from my father was an insurance agent, or adjuster, I should say, for State Farm Insurance. My mother grew up at a farm in New York State and was a housewife, and I have one sister. I've been married it'll be 25 years in May, to a person I met in a bookstore in Seattle, a woman I met in Seattle, I should say.
Did you actually meet her in a bookstore?
Yes, I met her at Shorey's bookstore in Seattle 25 years ago.
Let's say have a moment of silence for Shorey's
Most of
bookstore.
silence.
What got you involved in the book business? What was the thing that made it interesting for you?
I had always liked history, and I always read, and I was always had a scholarly bent, and was really into books as text. But then I became more aware of them as objects. When I probably was about 15, a former ABAA member, John McLaughlin, opened a store in Anaheim called the Book Sale. And I remember riding my bicycle there to go there. And he had all kinds of things, from Americana to comic book art to science fiction to early printed books. I mean, he had a real collage of things. And that's where I first was exposed to seeing books as a collectible object. Then when I had graduated high school, and in my first year in college, this would have been 1970, November 1970, I saw a poster on the library at Chapman for the Los Angeles ABAA Antiquarian Book Fair. Now, I had seen, back then in those days, book fairs used to be a kind of more of an event. In Channel 5, I think it was, in Los Angeles, every time they had one, they would have live interviews from them. So I had seen different books displayed, but I actually dragged my girlfriend to the book fair in 1970, and at the late lamented Ambassador, and I bought my first book from Peter Howard, who is still exhibiting at this fair here, and I think I spent $15.
Was your first investment, huh?
That was my first.
And then from there, what did you do then? I mean, now you've bought your first book.
Well, I started as a collector. When I graduated from college, we were in one of Reagan's recessions, and there wasn't work, so I went to work for a wine company that's now defunct. And though I haven't consumed 2 bottles of alcohol in my entire life, it doesn't interest me, but I used to taste it and spit it out, and so I knew that aspect of the wine business. And I worked there for 3.5 years. And during that time, I just got more and more involved in books. I picked up catalogs. I got to know who dealers were. And then I was introduced to a man by the name of William Piper, who was a modern literature dealer in Whittier, California. And he took me under his wing. He liked me, and I was in my early 20s, and he encouraged me to get involved in the business. I started as a scout, where as a collector you see things one place that were priced, 2, 3, 4 times in another place, and I would buy it and sell it to somebody else or trade it. And then, like most people of my period, they were all connected with the ABAA Bookman's Weekly. I started running ads in there. I remember going to Kmart one time and seeing, walking down an aisle, and at the end of the aisle they had books 3 for $1, and one of them was first editions of John Steinbeck's Journal of a Novel. So I bought them for 3 for $1, and I remember selling them like hotcakes on the AB for $10 post-paid.
Ooh,
and then
big money.
And well, I could tell it was a winner, so I went around to all the Kmarts in Orange County and picked up all of those. So you just got involved. But Bill Piper had promoted me, and at one point he did the incredibly generous act of giving me his mailing list. He said, you know,
that's unheard of usually.
You know, you really, you know, it's time for you to go and do your own thing. And he gave me this incredible gift. And so I had done the AB ads, and I did 2 catalogs. When in 1977, Maurice F. Neville, Maury Neville of Santa Barbara, was opening his rare book firm there, and he hired me to be the manager of the firm. There was a small group of us about the same age at that time, like Tom Goldwasser and Brad Morrow and different people who were in the business. We were all about 24, 25, 26, and you know, we were kind of the up-and-coming kids then. So,
tell me a little bit about your affiliation with Peter Stern.
Peter and I met during the Maury years. We were probably Maury's closest friends at the time. And I worked for Maury from December of 1977 to the end of January 1983, a little over 5 years. And I had met Peter then, and we just became friends. And Peter and I became partners, and at one point, a couple months after I left Maury in '83, and we were together about 13 and a half years. We had a bi-coastal business. We had an open store in Boston. Peter ran that. We'd travel a great deal. I ran all the catalogs and printing and you know, the cataloging and different things out here on the West Coast. So it was.
What precipitated your splitting up?
I think we had just about you know, gone as far as we could with it. Peter is a very energetic person, likes to make a lot of money, and he just wanted to move farther ahead in that. I would say the Maury Neville years, the 5 years I worked with Maury, were probably the most fun years in my career. I would say it's almost 12 years since Peter and I have been apart. Have been enjoyable years, despite with aging, deaths and family and illnesses and things I've encountered that way. I would say they were much more relaxing, enjoyable. The years Peter and I together, I think, were the hard years.
Yeah.
Were the really hard years. I mean, you know, we would have books and a stock worth in 7 figures in those days, and we didn't have any money. We were, you know, people thought we were wealthy, but we weren't. I remember one time we went 7 weeks without paying ourselves anything. I mean, it was not. It all went back into the business. We had there were very, very tough times financially. Yet, you know, on paper we looked great, but it was like many businesses that are asset rich and cash poor, a lot of smoke and mirrors.
Yeah, yeah, an awful lot, I guess. Well, I don't see Peter here at this book fair.
He's here.
He's here. I haven't seen him yet. So it will be a safe thing to say that Bill Piper and Maury Neville were sort of like mentors to you.
Well, Bill Piper was a mentor to me. Maury Neville was young. He was I was 25 when I started. He was 32, and he had inherited a bunch of money rather unexpectedly. Though he came from an affluent Indiana family, he was not poor by any means.
Yeah.
But he came into some millions of dollars very unexpectedly, and he became the leading buyer at the Jonathan Goodwin sale in 77 and 78. Maury and I kind of learned the business together. Maury really didn't.
Sounds like it.
I had a great deal of power under Maury's time. I influenced him greatly, and I made a lot of the decisions. It was, I mean, some of them were good, and I would say the majority of them were good, but I certainly made my mistakes like
we all
else.
do. You know, things have changed a great deal in the last 25 or 30 years. Of course, there has been the so-called Internet revolution. What aspects of the book business have changed since the Internet revolution, in your view?
Oh, I think books, it's all becoming an online experience. The bookstores are closing right and left in Los Angeles and across the country. The so-called famous book areas like 4th Avenue in New York and Hollywood Boulevard in Los Angeles, these were all predicated on cheap rents. The minute that these became more trendy and more desirable, these people were put out. And I also think with technology, people are just more used to the convenience of it. Yeah. I think the big difference between me and probably some of the other people you will encounter is my great connection with rare books and the world of Hollywood. Unlike people who've dealt in incunabula and fine printing and Americana, I early on in my life wanted to meet the men and women who made the movies. I grew up on them, and I wanted to meet these people. And I went out of my way. I got involved in film very early, starting in high school, and I really got super involved when I went to college. And I got to meet, and in some cases became friends with a number of famous stars and directors who were still alive. I got to meet, people like Howard Hawks and Frank Capra and King Vidor, and all these people. All these people were alive. John Ford, Orson Welles. These people were alive then. I became friends with various film stars. Fay Ray and I were good pals.
Really?
Mae Clark. I eventually wound up publishing her autobiography. Philip Dunn, who wrote the screenplay for How Green Was My Valley. I was very close friends with him and his wife, Amanda Dunn, who kind of had one of the great salons in Los Angeles. And through this, I got to meet a lot of people. And so I became a noted, I suppose, specialist in cinema material, because I knew all this. I knew the people, I knew the connections, and it was an area of great interest to me. So I've had many great things, Hollywood-related, involving, I've had many things involving F. Scott Fitzgerald, manuscript material, inscribed books, letters.
Wow.
I've had Faulkner manuscripts, Steinbeck cinema manuscript material, Nathaniel West material. I mean, all these different people that came out to Hollywood to work when sound came in. I eventually handled a lot of important pieces.
One of the questions that I ask everybody is to talk a little bit about how easy or difficult it was for you to make the transition to computers.
Actually, it was a great thing for me. I used to type on an IBM Selectric.
Me too.
Selectric, and my hands used to ache. And,
Yeah.
and what I found was, and I had put off computers for a while because they were warning us all about carpal tunnel syndrome in our hands. But what I discovered was it's a dead keyboard.
Yeah.
And the Selectric has wheels and a pulley inside, and it goes around and around, and the typewriter actually vibrates.
Yeah.
And what was happening to me was I was picking up all the vibration from the typewriter, and when I went to a computer, it was a dead keyboard, no vibration, and it went away. I can't use a laptop today because there is a low level of vibration in a laptop. And I've noted, I bought a laptop and I used it, and it's just enough where it bothers my joints in my hand. But no, I found it, I mean, like all new technology, it's intimidating to a certain degree, coming from a trade that is largely a 19th century trade that is only, until the internet revolution, was only speeded up slightly by telegrams, a telephone, faxes. But I've found adapting to it has been good in certain ways. It's been bad for buying. It's made knowledge, so much more universal. Because they're aggregated together on websites. Everybody is, pricing them in a similar range. That's a negative aspect of it. But I think as antiquarian booksellers age, I think it's actually a very good thing, because I remember, I knew a number of the earlier generation, from, Warren Hull to John Fleming to Margie Cohn to, the people before me. And I knew a lot of the lesser dealers. And I saw the lesser dealers, as they got older, were more marginalized. As their health went down, they couldn't travel as much, they couldn't go to book fairs, they couldn't scout as much. And I think the internet is going to allow the baby boomers and above to still be connected and deal at whatever level they want to deal, how active they want to be. And I think that's a genuine plus for the aging bookseller. Like, I will be 56. I'm in the top 5% youngest of the ABAA at this moment.
I had asked a couple of people who went to the Hong Kong Book Fair what their observations were, and they said that most of the people there were under the age of 40, running around buying things. So at least there's one country that there's some young people in.
Well, it's obviously they're being exposed to a new cultural experience because of the repression in China, and with the rise of China, I think we're going to see them come on in the book world. It would not surprise me one day that there's a Chinese antiquarian book trade.
No, wouldn't surprise me at all.
I was saying earlier to somebody that I think we will see, 2, 3 major collectors come west out of China someday who are very very wealthy. I suspect they'll collect China and Asian material, but
that's what I was told.
But I think that it will be. I think we'll see people that spend real money.
Well,
I think it's coming.
It certainly bodes well. If you were entering the book trade today, how would you do it? Or would you do it?
I would only tell people, only do it if you can do it at the higher levels. Because I really think that various aspects of our trade are going to vanish very quickly here now. The scholarly bookseller, I think, is almost over. Many of them are gone now. But once, this being 2008, the lawsuit by the publishers against Google for digitizing books goes to court. Now, it's going to be solved one way or the other. But both sides, I know, agree that this is coming. An entire libraries will be digitized. Lots of scholarly material will not be saleable at
any price.
At any price. I mean, literally, we will see libraries destroyed and dumped and pulped. The past 10 years, I have concentrated on the book as object, whether the book is a famous title in a particularly nice copy, or whether it's signed or inscribed, or it's a unique letter. I've gone towards the book as object because I don't think that a lot of these areas are going to survive with a good collector base, because it will be, the information will be accessible. I think libraries will stop buying the 12th edition of some 19th century anatomy book that they don't have in their collection, because it will be available freely online.
What do you perceive as the greatest challenges facing the antiquarian book trade in the decades to come?
I think connecting with some kind of collector base. I think that the baby boomer generation, of which I'm a member, I guess the baby boomers, the last year of that is considered 1964.
Yeah.
And then I guess we go to Generation X. But I think the baby boomers were the last generation to really read for pleasure. I think that past that time, the people that have come after that are, between computers, television, and much more oral, visual, and reading is not part of it. It's too slow a process for them, especially now with everything so speeded up. I think the collector base in the antiquarian trade is largely people in their mid-40s on up.
Yeah.
The crisis I think the trade has is connecting with people that are under that age group. There's a barrier, I think, as things go up more and more and more. There are books here that just a few years ago would have been, $6,000 or $10,000. There's dozens of books out there that are,
20,
30, 40, 50, 65, 75,000. And the escalation in them is terrific. Who will be able to afford these as the collector base shrinks? That's the big question. And I also think younger people are going to collect different types of material. Who's going to collect incunabula in the future? Who's going to collect 18th century English drama if you're not exposed to it? So it's going to be a challenge.
One of the things that always is on my mind is what's going to happen to the ABAA. It's our association, yet if we don't have younger members getting in, as older members die off or retire, what will happen to the organization? Do you think there'll always be one?
It's a very good question. I could see it go either way. I could see it become a defunct organization. I think there's a very valid chance of it if the expenses of running the organization are set at a certain level, and that there's not enough financial support by a broadly enough base membership. Yeah, I could see it happen. I think it's a really important organization in this time of massive fraud and forgeries on eBay and scams on the internet, and I think it's one of those kind of quiet bastions of integrity and knowledge, and I think it's a very good thing. But I think the ABA has it has as much a challenge as of connecting with members and people as the members have connecting with newer collectors. It's a domino effect of challenge.
Yeah, I have mixed emotions as you do about where it's going to end. Well, who are, in your opinion, the great booksellers of our day? Who are the rising stars in the trade? They're two separate questions put together. So.
Boy, that's a hard one because
I know, but it's interesting in your observation.
I'm very much a student of the trade. I've read all the memoirs of different people, the booksellers before me, 19th century. I mean, I literally have I have a very extensive personal collection of books and manuscripts that most people don't know that I have, but I do. I'm very
and the subject matter.
I have everything from rare cinema material to letters by Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln. I have an Edgar Allan Poe ALS. I have a Sherlock Holmes manuscript. I have.
You have a retirement fund, is what you're saying.
Yes. That is what. My collection is worth a great deal. I have a valuable stock, but my personal collection's worth more money than
I would imagine
more than the stock. But what was the question again? I'm sorry.
Try to address. I'll split it up in two parts. Looking at the trade today, who are the icons? Who are the movers and shakers? Who are the so-called big dealers?
Well, I think, of course, it depends on the area.
Well, in all areas.
If you're talking about Americana, I think Bill Reese, for
Absolutely.
example, is the preeminent Americana dealer in the country. He certainly, here's a man with great wealth, but works harder than hell at his business. This is not some dilettante business. It's a very serious business. in which he puts a lot of energy with his staff, and many of the catalogs he has issued are, in the world of books are, historic.
Yeah, some great scholarship involved.
Certainly in modern literature, and that, my former partner, Peter Stern's leading member. There are a number.
In literature, there are a number.
There are many of what you would call so-called movers and shakers. Yeah. I suppose the most quiet one that is unknown to people is Jeffrey Marks of Rochester, whose greatest books are not online. His material is, he handles so many things privately. I mean, what he can do in a year in terms of what he sells and the things that have passed through his hands are staggering. I mean, and it's not known.
Well, I know Jeff and Jennifer, so I tend to agree with you on
yes,
that.
Yes, it's a secret. It's not publicly known, but some of the very best material in modern literature, and by that I mean Steinbeck, Hemingway, Faulkner, Fitzgerald, these kind of things. He's handled the very best.
These magnificent copies and signed presentations.
But the manuscript material and the presentations are just, I wish I could reveal the stories publicly about what he's handled, but it's really.
Let's leave it for him to reveal it or not when I interview him.
Pardon?
When I interview him, we'll see if he reveals
I think he will be hard to drag it out of him.
Well, if Jennifer's with him, maybe it'll be a little easier.
Well, we'll see. I think he's a lawyer and he's very circumspect, so I think you're going to have a hard time. But if anybody's watching this interview in the future, they should know that the Jennifer Larson and Jeffrey Marks, husband and wife, are really, truly remarkable dealers who, though they are certainly have a level of affluence, they are the hardest working people I know. I mean, literally. Dawn to late at night.
Rulon Miller's another.
And Rob Rulon Miller is he's indefatigable was just what I was going for.
The same word.
He's just going. He just flies everywhere, does everything. He's just. Rob, I would say, is probably a little more restless. I think that's part of his thing. But he certainly comes from a background of wealth, and he works very hard. I think it's a misnomer that some people have that just because you're wealthy doesn't mean you work hard.
I think the wealthier booksellers I know are all working their butts off.
Yeah. And
they're doing it because they love it.
Yeah, they enjoy it. I mean, there's a huge number of people in the ABAA that are just trying to keep, body and soul together and preserve what they, a certain level of affluence and that they have as things change. But I don't find too many ABA booksellers that really don't work at it rather actively. I mean, some people less because they have health problems and various things, but most of the dealers are not fluffy dealers. They're serious.
They're serious people.
Serious. They're not the number of dilettantes, the people who've joined the ABAA just because they can and they have money and they play with the books. I think that's a really tiny proportion of the membership.
It used to be a big proportion back in the 50s. But you're right. It's a small portion now. Let me just ask you quickly, while we've got a few more minutes to go. I asked you about who you thought were the big-time booksellers. Who do you see as some of the rising stars in the trade? Young dealers, if you will, who may or may not be members of the association, but someday will be? Or new members of the association who you look at and say, that's a person who's going to make it?
Oh, I think somebody like Harper Levine, who's very involved in photography. I see him as having a lot of energy. I mean, he's in his 30s.
Yeah.
I'm just trying. There's so few younger members of the ABA.
I know.
You quickly go to Jeff Mazer, who I think who's Peter Howard's kind of protege, and I think he will come along stronger. I think I'm sure there are dealers out there on the internet that I don't know, that I just run across as a name, that will be the ones to come on and join the ABA in the future, or will come on strong in terms of selling antiquarian books. In the old days, the principal model to me, it seems, is that when I started, the books were sold by dealers to collectors, and then they largely went from the collectors either to auction houses or back to dealers. A lot of material just went right back to the trade. And nowadays, because of the internet, it's so much more diffused. Yeah. People put up their own books on eBay. They put them up on ABAA books. The books are getting diffused out. And in the old days, when people would collect an author, say Ernest Hemingway, they would collect all the magazines, the anthology appearances, the ephemera. Yeah. Now they want The Sun Also Rises. They want The Old Man and the Sea, and they want a few high spots, and that's their collection. Wow. It's a very different kind of more high spot oriented trade, and I think people that are coming along, that will be the challenge for them. The younger people is that one, it's going to take a lot of money to deal with the high spots at that end. And I think people are going to come out of left field. People that, like most dealers in the trade had some experience in a bookstore, and they were, and that kind of thing.
Apprenticed someplace.
They apprenticed, or they had a mentor, or they had something like that. And that I don't see as much. It's more like you start buying and selling things and you leap in on the internet.
Yeah.
And so it's so hard for me to predict who these people are, because I think a lot of the people that are going to be successful will come out of other areas, kind of thing, and move over, and it's going to be a different group of people.
Yeah. So do you have hope for the future for the trade?
I think there'll always be a trade, but I think it's going to be a smaller collector base for a lot of areas. I think it's going to be different. When I started with modern literature, it was much more serious literature oriented. James Joyce, Steinbeck. T.S. Eliot. Poetry and very heavy. Lewis McNeice. All these different kinds of things. And now, I will have to say that I was really the first one in the ABAA to really promote cinema-related material. I was the first. I was 20 years ahead of that kind.
All this group now.
And now you look at all the high spot things are all film related. Yeah. The Great Gatsby, all these high spots. The Maltese Falcon, which used to be, a minor book. Yeah. Now you're looking at a six-figure book in Jack. Yeah. But film has and entertainment and cinema and popular culture has taken a big chunk of the buying power of the trade. It's gone that direction.
Well, Jim, thanks very much for your insight. I appreciate your coming, and good luck in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.